How's it going, everybody? And welcome back for another episode of the Chem Valley Show. This is episode number 16. I appreciate you all for joining me. I'm your host, Aaron Sisson, and we're on day number 21 of this lockdown here in Ontario. I fell a few days behind, so I'm going to try and catch up with a few interviews each day here. Today, I'm really excited for my interview. When you hear Sarnia celebrities, you think of the Trues and people like that, because they're in Sarnia all the time. And this is another one that comes to mind when I think of Sarnia celebrities, just because he's here all the time, and he's a good friend of mine. He actually was on my first ever comedy show I ever promoted. I did have the poster here, but I can't find it now. But Jeff Leeson's joining me now. Jeff, how's it going?
It's going well, buddy. How are you?
Not too bad. It's so good to connect again, and it's been a long time actually since the station days. I believe that's the last time we've seen each other. How have things been going?
Well, things have been pretty good. All things considered. Obviously, there's the situation in the world, so it's been a different year, that's for sure. Normally, I'm touring and always on the road. So
Were you on the road in the midst of all the craziness back in March?
Yeah, I was actually out in California when everything took place, and yeah, it was my buddy Ty Wright, who's a terrific comedian that I tour with. We were sort of there. He is nice. That's wicked. Yeah, we were doing that tour,
Yeah.
in all over the states, but we were based out of L.A. and we're doing some stuff. In sort of in California. I think I'm trying to remember where. Oh, we were at a comedy club that's in a resort in California. I can't think of the name now, but we were there when it on the final weekend. We kind of did our last few shows, and it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you just saw less and less and less people until Sunday night. Zero people showed up because there was the announcement was that Monday was things were closed, and so we waited because originally it was 2 weeks, and we had this big tour planned, coming all the way back to Canada and then across Canada and then back down to California. We kind of had the year sort of planned out on the road, and yeah, so we waited out 2 weeks thinking we're gonna
Yeah.
go on that tour, and then little by little it just everything started getting canceled. And then it was like by the following week or maybe a week and a half later, I just woke up to like 50 emails saying all these shows are canceled or
Oh,
have to be rescheduled at
yeah.
minimum. But most, a lot of the places are, I think, out of business now. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely, it was definitely, I was on the
Did you
road.
get to do some shows over there in the States? Because I know that was something
Yeah.
you've always wanted to do, is go and tour in the States.
Yeah. We were there for three months. Basically, we left in January, toured down to California. We're based there, and then we went to Texas, New Mexico, Arizona,
Oh wow.
Nevada. I got to tape a special in Utah back in March. So, yeah, things were going really well, and sort of picking up a little bit of steam. I felt like we were gaining some traction there, at least with doing some stuff on the road. And so yeah, I got to do quite a bit while I was there. It was
That's
great.
awesome. That's awesome, man. I'm glad that you got to live some of your dream. Let's talk about
Thank you.
let's talk a little bit about how you got into comedy and what made you fall in love with it. When did you first of all, when did you fall in love with it? Like, what was your first comedy experience, I guess?
That's a great question. I don't remember specifically. I, my the first thing that I remember as far as comedy goes, or like making a group of people laugh, is when I was a kid. We had like a big anniversary party for my great grandparents, and my mom was like the MC of the whole thing, and she wrote like sort of jokes and bits and like funny, almost sort of roasting kind of things, and just killed. Like she crushed, and And I just remember being I don't know, I was probably like 6 or 7, and I just remember sitting there and looking at it and being like, "That's so cool what she just did to those
Yeah.
people." Like, and I was just very fascinated with the fact that anybody can just stand there and say something, and a room full of people laughed, and like you could feel the energy and the wave. And I wasn't the one delivering the speech, but I felt that. And then I remember being very in awe of that. And then what made me fall in love with the stand-up comedy was when I was a kid. Every day after school, I would watch Just for Laughs and Comedy at Club 54 back to back every day, without, like, nobody could bother me from like 3:30 to 4:30. And or maybe it was like an hour for Just for Laughs and half hour Comedy at Club 54. I forget the schedule, but anyway, so that was, and I watched every comedian that you have ever heard of, and a lot of comedians you would never have heard of, on TV like back then, and just fell in love with like the art of comedy, and again the fascination of like, wow, these guys they're just saying things they thought of, and then they're getting this reaction from people. I was really fascinated with that.
Mm-hmm. A lot of comedians are like, they kind of have their act played out beforehand. You kind of have a little bit of a different style, and I learned that. I think the first time Stu brought you to the station, he told me
Stu
that
Manchi.
Stu Manchi, which actually I want to talk a little bit later on. You have a new podcast, Leeson Learn, which I seen you had Stu on there. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can talk about that a little later on. But I remember the one night at the station, Stu came up to me. He said, I've never heard of this guy, Jeff Leeson. He said, this guy's going to put you in stitches. He's the funniest guy on earth. And he was right. He was right, man. It was one of the first shows that you did when he opened the bar, so there wasn't too many people there, but I remember being one of the only people like in there, laugh, like just dying, man. It was incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let's talk about like starting out and whatnot. Like, what was it like starting out? Like, I know you worked with some guys like Lars and stuff at the start of your career, going on tours and doing like just shows wherever. What was it like starting out as a comedian?
Yeah, so actually when I worked with Lars, it was really the start of his comedy career. I had been doing it for at least 10, maybe 12 years by the time I met Lars.
Oh wow.
But Lars and what was great is we met in I
got
met
that
him
story
like,
backwards then.
yeah, no, because I honestly started when I was 14 was like my first show, and then 16 was when I really started to kind of take it seriously. And then by the time I graduated high school, I was booking shows and kind of hitting the road, for basically full time. But I had to also have jobs and stuff, like when I was just an opening act,
Right.
so I would but yeah, the early days, of like the amateur night scene and stuff like that, it was very weird for me. It was a very different experience because I was so young. I was 16, 17, 18. Those years were really like, my mom would sometimes, she would basically always have to come with me to the shows because I was too young to get into the actual venue where I was performing. So my mom came to, shows in like Niagara Falls and Hamilton and Toronto and, all over the place. So we would, you know, basically meet after school, and then off we would go to these shows. And I was terrible. I was really bad. Uh,
Did you have
yeah.
like a plan set back then, or were you off the cuff as well?
No, 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 no. The off the cuff thing, like the what I do now, it hasn't been. I started that like really. I did straight stand up, just like set up joke punchline stuff for like the first 10 years for sure.
Yeah.
And then around the 10-year mark, I hit this sort of wall creatively where I felt like what I was doing was I was doing my version of what I thought a comedian would do. And so as a result, what I presented on stage was sort of typical cookie cutter comedian. I could pass for I would be a fantastic opening act at any comedy club because I'm funny enough to warm up the crowd, but there's no way I'm taking anything away from the headliner, and I'm not standing out in any way. And I'm not really being myself at all. I'm being what I think a comedian, would be, and I'm talking about what I think a comedian would talk about, relationships and the differences between men and women and stuff like that, which really I don't give a shit about, and I don't, I don't care about that. So why would I talk about it? But around the 10-year mark, I started to think like, I was in my mid 20s by that point, so I had toured, quite a bit, especially in the States at these like one nighters at like bowling alleys and shit like that.
Yeah.
And so I just hit this wall of like, I'm not really having fun doing this anymore. I'm sort of going through the motions and I'm doing what I think what I think is right. And then, uh, I met this guy named Ez Fidel who this is a longer story and I won't do that, but I went to high school with him, but we kind of knew each other, but we weren't friends. We reconnected later and he wanted to get into comedy. And so I was like, yeah, let me, I'll answer a few questions. And we kind of sat down, and through talking, we realized like he would be a really good booker. So he started sort of booking shows for me and then coming to the shows and doing like 5 minutes. And it was sort of like a mentoring thing. Like I would, tell him how I thought his jokes were going, his presentation, and he would try to book, some shows and shit like that, right? And so he would see that when I was doing these shows, I'd do a 45-minute set, and I would have like 35 minutes of it be this cookie cutter comedian, and there was 10 minutes of it where something happened in the audience, and he's like, that 10-minute chunk, you're getting these bursts of laughter that are way
Yeah.
bigger than anything you're saying. And he was kind of the one that sort of, was like, what if you could create that into a whole show? Which at the time I was like, there is no way that you can do a whole show based on stuff that you don't know is about to happen, or that you don't know is,
Yeah.
what if they say nothing? What if there's nothing to go on? Like, are you fucking crazy? These are heckles that I'm handling. How do I create? So that was the first time that idea got in my head, and it took maybe a couple more years where I hit this wall, and I was like, I don't feel like I'm me on stage. I don't feel like they're, and really, a huge part of me is I'm very curious about people, and I have lived this weird life, like this, done comedy since 14 and sort of chased this ridiculous dream. But I'm curious what happens on the other side. Do you get people who are like accountants and, lawyers and shit like that, like normal stuff, mechanics, whatever, like, and I want to ask questions and sort of create on the spot, and, sort of work with the audience so they're part of the creation of the show. And it just kind of went from there to what it is now.
That's awesome. And I love your act now. I love seeing you live. I love being a part of your comedy special that you did in Sarnia, which is something I want to talk about because that was a really special day. I think just the way it all came together, the promotion leading up and everything. Let's talk about it.
First of all, I absolutely love Sarnia in general. I just want to say that Sarnia is like a second home. I'm from London, but I feel like Sarnia is like a second home. Not that I've ever lived there. I just feel at home when I'm there, and I love the people. And so when this opportunity came about, and the guy who kind of set it up and connected me with the Amazon Prime stuff, he was like, where do you want to do it? And I was like, I know exactly the place that it has to be done. And I knew that it had to be used to be Stubborn Mule. It was a place I performed at it. Stubborn Mule, Rustic.
What was your first show there? Was it the one with Ian Alexander back in the day?
No.
Okay.
No,
do you remember that one?
Oh yeah. The guy came out with my face taped to his dick. Of course I remember that. Yeah. And it was the first time we did a show in the back part, which was more like an intimate comedy club. And I really liked that setup because out front, like in the big area,
It's tough to fill.
very tough, but because they had the big tables, so they were kind of more spread out.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit tough out there. But yeah, my first time ever at the Stubborn Mule was years ago, and it was booked by Jason Winter, and it was the very, very first show was great. The second show was an absolute disaster, and nobody showed up for it, and it was hilarious in its own right. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is what kind of made it so special to get to that comedy special, which you did. Like just the whole promotion and everything leading up to it. Like you've put on lots of comedy shows. Like, did that feel like a special night for you? The Off the Cuff special?
Oh yeah. Very. It was a different, it was a completely different feeling, even in the same room, because I had been in that room so much, but they set it up completely different. Yeah, they set it up, completely different. The lighting was great. The stage was awesome. The thing in behind was really cool. And to that point, I had never really done a show with as not necessarily as big. Like I had done bigger audiences, bigger venues, but as far as the how big the show was being filmed, and it was my first kind of real comedy special. It was also self-produced by
Yeah,
I
you
put
got an incredible team that you work with. I gotta say, like, I love seeing all you guys do on the road and everything, like all the extras with businesses and whatnot. Through the pandemic, you've been doing commercials and whatnot with your production team. Like, you got an amazing team behind you, and I had the pleasure to work with a lot of them that day. Just getting chairs and whatnot. It was a crazy day.
Yeah, that day. So I wasn't there. This is a crazy thing that only a handful of people know about. But during the day, do I have time to tell you a story? Like,
Of course,
do we have time,
yeah,
or are we?
yeah,
Are
yeah.
you
No,
okay?
no time constraint.
Okay, so the year before the special in Sarnia, I taped a special in Guelph. Okay. Now, the special in Guelph was just something I wanted to film, but it had no real, like the Off the Cuff had Amazon Prime. We knew where it was going, we knew how it had to specifically be done. The other one was purely run and gun. Like I, hired a guy who put together this ragtag group. Like I had, very little sort of control over it. It was more just here's what I want to do and let's slap it together. But I didn't have anyone looking after the day to day. So basically, what happened was I got to the venue at like 9 a.m, and I was the executive producer handling all of the backstage stuff. By the time it got to the show, I was fucking exhausted. So I hated the show portion when I saw it because I can see in my face, in my eyes, I'm tired. There was all kinds of there was lighting issues. The guy in the booth like argued every single move I wanted to make, and it was getting aggravating. He was paid, like I was paying him, and it was like it was so frustrating. But you're supposed to have someone that takes care of that. Then you, as the talent, relax. You come in, you go on stage, and boom, all of that shit doesn't matter, right? But I was handling both all day, and so yeah, I hated the show, so I never did anything with it. I put like a clip out that I liked years ago, maybe two, but that was it. And I was like, hey, I can't show anyone this. It's terrible. I didn't like the production. The audio's actually not too bad, but the production side, I didn't like it. So a year later, so it took another year, and then we did the Off the Cuff, and we knew exactly what needed to be changed. And one of the things was, for me personally, to get the best stuff on camera, I need to have no stress during the day. I need to be focused on, the show, clear my head, and be kind of in, and so Ty Gright, of all people, Ty Gright steps up and wore a fucking suit. It was the first time I ever saw him in a suit. I didn't even know he owned one. And he shows up and absolutely saves the day, because while I go have a nice workout and kind of relax at the hotel, it turns out that there are unbelievable issues going on. One of which is the seating that I was told would be there, no problem, 100%, never was ordered, and nobody has any idea how to get it. And now a ragtag group of people, such as yourself, and people who were only hired for production purposes, had to haul 300 and something chairs
It was
by
a lot.
hand. Yeah, tables too, however many tables there were, 350 chairs, rented a fucking like U-Haul,
They only had one dolly for the chairs.
one dolly, so everyone's fucking
Yeah.
portaging the tables and shit. Unbelievable. I knew nothing of this. I knew nothing. I'm just at the hotel. I'm taking a nap midday. I know nothing. Which I couldn't, I get to the venue, right? I get there, say the show is at like 8:30. I probably got there around 7:30, right?
Yeah.
When I walk into the green room area, nobody is saying, oh, everybody is sitting in complete silence, and they looked very tired. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing I knew of the day was that they were going to rehearse the camera shots. That's what these people were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, they look a little tired for just going through camera shots for a guy standing on stage who might go left or right. Like, that seems pretty simple to me, not realizing, of course, that everybody had just gone through hell carrying 350 fucking chairs, including yourself, who I found out after was one of the what Ty I think described as one of the MVPs of the day, because you stepped up and carried like 150 yourself. Tyke's wife got involved. Basically everybody that had hands and legs was told, get out here and lift these fucking chairs. So I didn't find that out till after, which of course I was like, uh, partially guilty about. I was like, I can't believe I've just enjoyed the day while you guys are going through this. But then was so grateful, and like,
of course,
forever owe all of you my I don't know. I was going to say my life, but that's a little drastic, but you know what I mean? Yeah, I owe you all that, because without that, those people, 300 and whatever people, were going to be standing, which is a fucking disaster for comedy. You need people seated. You need them to have drinks and have tables to put them down on. And so, we averted disaster. And so will never forget that for Ty Wright, yourself, the rest of the crew, James McVicker, Brad, fucking Courtney was involved there. I can't remember. There's people I'm missing, but all of them. It was
honestly my pleasure, man. And like, you helped me out in the past. Like I said earlier, you were on my first ever comedy show, the doubleheader that I did with Sam Losco back in like 2017. That mess, because that was my first ever promoting experience where I had to pull a performer outside and tell him that I wasn't going to be able to pay him. Because I remember the first night in Sarnia was so unbelievable, and we had such a good time. The crowd was great. And then we went to London, where I've never promoted a show in my entire fucking life, and I thought it was a good idea to go do it. And then I shit the bed, and I remember feeling so sorry talking to you outside of the venue, and you being so understanding. And then,
well, I've been there.
And I mean, let's talk about that, because you said you've promoted shows growing up and whatnot. What was it like promoting and like getting into that avenue of the business? Like, did you do it right from the start, get into promoting?
In a way, I mean, I've always been I've always taken
because I know the comedy business, like a lot of the promoters and whatnot, they come and go, right? Like it's not something that kind of sticks around. There's a few that are like kind of out there. I know like Showtime and Niagara. I don't know if they're still around, but like I know that there's the few comedy places out there that are kind of like brick and mortar, but most of them just kind of come and go, and they're bar and grills. So like, what was it like promoting in the start and whatnot, like comedy? And was there a lot of those brick and mortar places when you were younger?
Well, the those were really the comedy clubs, which when I first started was really kind of only Yuck Yucks.
Yeah.
And then there was a few independent, maybe a handful across out west. Laugh Comedy Factory or Laugh Factory or whatever in Edmonton. Bob Angeli, he had one for quite a while. There's others that have been around for a long time. Rumors in Winnipeg has been around for a long time, but Yuck Yucks was really the only kind of comedy clubs. When I first started, comedy wasn't really like it wasn't really what it is now, because now with the Netflix specials and stuff, it's really a mainstream thing. And podcasts, people listen to comedians podcasts and stuff, and then that's how they sell a lot of their tickets as well. So it really wasn't kind of the boom it is now. And it was kind of in a lull. It was sort of the late, what was it, would have been late, I think it was 99 or whatever. So late.
Who's your favorite growing up?
What's that, sir?
Who was your favorite growing up, like in that era?
So my original the guy who got me into everything was Jerry Seinfeld. He was the first that I really was like, I took a real liking to him. But I really loved, as I mentioned, the Just for Laughs and Comedy at Club 54. I really got to see a lot of excellent comedians and really good like clips of them. Some really excellent Canadian comics like Andrew Gross. I remember having one of the best sets I've ever seen on TV. Just absolutely crushed it. He told this story about his wife doing a bed in a bag. Like they used to have these beds in bags. I'm sure they still have them, where you get everything you need for a bed in a bag, and then his wife would make illegal substitutions from other beds and bags, and he just crushed. Like the crowd was going nuts. It was on a Comedy at Club 54 episode, and so guys like that and clips like that really were my first like sort of introduction and sort of got me hooked. And then Jerry Seinfeld was the first comedian where I loved the show. I loved his stand up, and I sort of emulated him in the beginning. I was very observational, clean, and then really material focused as well.
Mm. And I see you talked about podcasts there and comedians doing podcasts. I see that you just started one. It's Leeson Learned.
Yeah. Leeson Learned. It's something I've had in the works for a while. I taped a bunch of interviews like probably a year and a half ago, and then we did the US tour, so they got kind of put on hold, and then when everything started, we picked things back up again. Got a few sponsors on board, and so we were able to come out with them. So I'm very, very excited for it. And basically, it's based on curiosity. So I sit down with like comedians, all kinds of entertainers, entrepreneurs, and just kind of learn about their journey and how they got to where they are, a little bit about their life, and just ask any questions that kind of come to mind. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man, and I'm really excited for
where'd you get the inspiration for it?
For the show or the name?
Well, I guess both. Sure. Let's hear the inspiration for both.
Well, I'll give you the name because the name comes from a comedian named Al Val, who's like my little brother in stand up and in life. We've been friends forever, and I think of him like a little brother. And he at my mother's 50th birthday party, him and a bunch of my friends, we kind of made a speech about my mom, and in his, one of the last lines he says is he said something that didn't go his way, and then he says Leeson Learned. And so the name Leeson Learned started then, which was, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so so I've always had this name in my mind, but I never knew what it was. Like, what does that mean? And because it sounds like, is it educational, or is it like, what did I learn? Like, I just never knew. So then when I was doing the podcast, the inspiration for that is really my stand-up is based on curiosity. I'm asking questions because I'm curious, and it has to be very quickly done and in a comedic manner. So whatever I ask, I have to have an answer, make it funny, move on, next thing, try to tie it together to make some sense. In this, it's a way to be curious but have longer, if I was sitting down with that audience member and didn't have to make anyone laugh, what else would I ask them? That's the inspiration behind it.
That's awesome. And what are some of the guests you've had so far on the show? You've had 2 episodes, right? I seen you had Robbie G. Was the last guest? And I seen in the trailer you had Stu. You have Stu as a guest on the show.
Yes, sir. So part of the show is, I want to have people that are public figures. Like Robbie G came out this Thursday. Dave Merhaj, who's a comedian, he's also on a show called Rami that's on Hulu. These guys are, they have good followings and people recognize them, and I thought their stories were interesting. And they're also, I know them. But the other side of it is I also want to have people that are entrepreneurs, but also just are interesting and have a very fascinating story. And nobody to me is more fascinating than Stu Manchi. So he was one guy that I had to sit down and learn even more about, because I knew him, I liked him, I like his vibe, but I didn't really know, a lot about him, and so that was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I think that episode is number 4, which is in 2 weeks from now.
Awesome. I can't wait to look for it. I won't ask you for too much on it then. I'll post the link once it's released. I think that's really important when you have a podcast, just to kind of don't corner yourself into one thing, because like you're a comedian, you could go and interview a bunch of different comedians, but I think if you did that, you'd run out of interesting people to interview, right? So if you kind of have different avenues, you'll be able to get different fans and whatnot. And I think I'm really enjoying that about your show so far. Who was the first guest you had on?
That was Dave Merhaj from Rami. And then this next week coming up is Al Val, who is a comedian, as I just mentioned, and also he just did a taping for CBC Gem, which was awesome. So he came out as queer last year, and so we get into that and how that affected him and his family. It's a really interesting and quite inspiring conversation. I'm really excited for people to hear that one next week.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll post the link to your podcast and everything below. What would you say is your favorite moment from your comedy career before I let you go? Like, what would you say is up there for the best thing you've ever experienced, either on stage or just being in the industry?
The best thing so far was probably back in March of 2020. I got selected to film a comedy special for Dry Bar Comedy, which is a very popular. They do a bunch of comedy specials on their app, but they're also very popular on YouTube and Facebook. They have a bunch of clips that have gone really viral, and they're completely clean. So it's a completely clean show, no swearing, nothing about God or religion, or like there's a lot of very strict guidelines that you have to stick within. So I was selected to be a part of that last March. It was really tough because, normally at my shows I can say whatever I want. It doesn't really matter, within reason, but I can swear and say whatever. And this time I really had to, it was a challenge to really keep within the guidelines, and it was one of the best crowds I've ever witnessed. They were unbelievable, and I was really proud of what we were able to do there, and I'm very excited. It comes out in April of this year, and so I that would probably be one that sticks out, where it was like, I just remember being on stage being like, this is crazy. I've watched these clips, I've seen people on this very stage, and now I'm seeing the other side. I'm seeing the other view, which was really quite a moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know one of my favorite experiences, just Jeff Leeson, I guess, in Sarnia. One was obviously the comedy special, but this was definitely up there for one of my favorite moments. We won't be able to hear you when I play it, but here's a little clip.
I'll count it in, Randy.
He's not too drunk. Are you ready to do this?
In 5, in 4, in 4,
3.
Action.
And then 2.
Action.
Do you want to put a shirt on for this? You don't want to put a shirt on for this?
I don't wear shirts. Randy, put a fucking shirt on, Randy.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, calm down.
Why you told me?
We're doing a promo.
You told me it was going to be our show.
See, it feels nice. This feels nicer than it should. Can we do the promo now? We're going to start the promo for the special. Mr. Leahy, is he asleep?
This guy's name is Jeff Griffin.
That was one of my favorite moments. I would have played the whole clip. It's 3 minutes long, but I didn't want to take too much more of your time here. But that was one of my favorite moments. I remember being in the green room. I already had a crazy day with them. I think we were just in a garage before that for another interview, and just that was really that was probably one of the funnest moments. That was the funniest moment from that day I remember for sure. So I appreciate you coming out and doing that. And
dude, that was amazing of them to do that for me, because I mean that was to promote the special that was gonna be happening there. To that point, we had sold a few tickets, like, you know, I don't know how many, but you know, we had moved a few, but that really put us up, you know, and put us over the edge and sold it out. So, you know, that was so much fun. And I told them, like, they asked me a couple questions right before we filmed. It was very quick. They only had a few minutes because they were in between sets at the live show.
Yeah.
So for them to even take the time to do that, because I know what it's like when you have a minute to spare during a live show, you want to get, you know, and so for them to do that was unbelievable. And so it was just like, what do you want us to do? And I was like, basically, I'm going to try to get the information out. You interrupt me and say whatever you want. And they were like, it was like, that's all they needed, and it was boom, go, and it was one take, done, no problem. And I don't even think we cut anything. We might have chopped like something for or put something in for like ticket information, but yeah, it was unbelievable, and they were great. And hilarious immediately.
Yeah, easily, for sure. It was awesome, man. And another thing I've seen you've been doing is like with businesses and stuff. Actually, a place that I just started working at was Sticks and Stones. I seen you went and you've been doing lots of
indoor golf.
Yeah,
I was just slightly beaten in a game of indoor golf by Paul.
Oh, were you? That was the final. Was you lost?
Yeah, just by a little bit. It was very little. If you want to see the video, it's on the Jeff Leeson Comedy Facebook page. You can see that he beat me by just barely, just a little, just a few.
Is that what you're up to in like, I guess, a little bit of last year when we were in lockdown and into 2021 here? Is that kind of all you can really do at this point, is do some videos with businesses and kind of work that way? Like, have you been doing any shows throughout the pandemic at all?
I was able to do a few in September. Yeah, well, I guess last year now, yeah, the 2020. So September, October, November, and a couple in early December before everything got shut down again. I was able to do a couple, socially distanced. Everybody did great. They, you know, masks till you get to your table. Everybody at the venues wearing masks, hand sanitizer everywhere. People using the bathroom one at a time, masks on. You know, it was awesome, and people were amazing, and I think people really needed to kind of get out and do something. So it was really, you can feel we needed to get back on stage because you miss it, but they needed, you know, to go out. So we had a mutual respect for each other that was a little bit more than before. And you know, obviously there's that fear there. Everybody's kind of looking around a little bit more than usual. But once the show starts and they're focused on the comedy, it's like, you know, it's like back to normal, which was awesome, an awesome feeling. So I was very lucky. I kept it to, you know, I toured the areas that I knew, had, you know, didn't have, I wasn't in like Toronto and places like that. You know, I was in very small towns that had extremely low cases. You know, in some cases, like I went to Wingham, they've never had anything there, and so we did 2 shows there. You know, and then again, everybody distanced. I live, you know, I work from home, so I'm not around everybody. So it was like, by myself in the car to the hotel by yourself around people. You know, usually we do like little meet and greets and like thank people for coming. That was all like from a distance, just waving, thank for coming, you know, no shaking hands, masks on. So it was great. It was weird, but it was great to just kind of get a few shows back. It was nice to be back. Definitely was difficult. It was really challenging, especially the first show. It felt like I didn't quite know what I was doing.
Did you use the mask for jokes?
No. Only because everybody that that I feel like that's just going to be overdone, and people make
Yeah.
mass jokes amongst themselves. So my goal actually was, I really want to take their mind
Off of everything.
off. Yeah, I don't want to even talk about it. Let's not even remind
Yeah.
them, because they're going to be reminded as soon as they have to stand up and walk out, because they have to put their mask back on. But while we're sitting here,
That's
let's
awesome.
just go back to, what do you do, and stuff like that. And so that was that. I just wanted to have fun, and I wanted them to have fun, and hopefully they did, and I certainly appreciated being able to be back on stage.
That's awesome, man. It's great to see that you're still out there promoting, and obviously out there with the podcast and everything, and still keeping busy during these crazy times. So I think that's what you got to do.
Yeah, it's kind of the only thing you. Well, I mean, it's not the only thing. You could do nothing and just piss and moan, but that's I like to be busy, and typically when I'm on tour, there's no time to think about what's next. You just know you got into such a rhythm. It's like, okay, I know that these days I'm going to be traveling, these days I'm in these cities, these days I have off, these are the booking days, these are the interviews we have to do for local radio or whatever. And so it was all kind of set out. So when all that got taken away, it was like, okay, how do you fill those slots in that time? And putting a lot more time and effort into the content side. I learned a lot about marketing and promotion through social media from promoting shows. So I figured, how can I take that and then help local businesses in different towns, and again, towns that had very few cases, and places that I knew I could go in and socially, film during the day when nobody's in there and everybody's away, and not harming anybody, and sort of help businesses out, help them do what I learned to do for our shows, and take that skill set and put it into the helping businesses and stuff market in a different way, and sort of show their product in like a humorous way, as opposed to just like a, hey, come buy our shit type of thing.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I know I always find myself scrolling through your videos at like late at night, and I know if I don't stop watching after a few, I'll end up probably watching till about like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I always enjoy your content, and I enjoy everything you're doing. Yeah, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time to join me on the show. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. For anyone watching out there, do you have anything to say? Like maybe if Spaz is out there watching, or
I really hope he is. How's it going, Spaz? I hope you're well, man. I love that guy. No, just I hope everyone's doing okay. Obviously it's a tough, weird, tough time for everybody, and let's all treat each other with respect and kindness. And if you see Taz, give him a fist bump, because he's fucking wicked.
Absolutely, will do, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully, once all this stuff is over, I can come watch you at a show again, or maybe we can even play a game of golf against each other at Sticks and Stones.
Are you good?
Not at all.
Great, then we can play. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, perfect. Let's do it. All right, thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you, buddy. Have a great day.
Before you go, where can they find you on social media?
Oh, yeah. So Instagram is at Jeff Leeson Comedian.
Actually, you know what? But without having to make you go through all that, look at that.
Boom, look at that. There, yeah, that's everything. Hey, great job.
I'm like a professional. Holy.
Thank you very much. And the podcast is Leeson Learned. It's Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts.
That's just it's a bad picture, but
there you go.
It was the best I could find. So
yeah, shout out to Kurt Furla for creating that logo and taking a picture of me and making it into a cartoon. Kurt Furla, the greatest.
That's awesome, man. I'll be supporting you all through everything. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate it, and thank you for having me on, and congratulations on this show. And I appreciate you having me on this episode number 16. I'm seeing.
Yeah. So I've been doing an episode every day of the law. I tried to. I said I was going to. I missed a few days, so now I'm playing catch up. But for the lockdown, I was going to do one every day, and then kind of sit down and see what I want to do with it after.
Sweet, man. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me on this episode. Thank you very
Of course,
much.
when I had it started, I knew you were somebody who I'd love to have on here. So I'm glad we got to have the talk. Thank you so much.
No problem, man. Have a great day. Thank you for having me.
You too, Jeff. Take care. All right, that was Jeff Leeson joining me here on episode number 16 of the Chem Valley Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. I'm probably going to be back on a little bit later with an interview. I'm interviewing my good friend Chris Abate, who's another YouTube creator. He's been creating some amazing content lately. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him about all that he's up to. I know that he's actually premiering a video in about a half an hour. So I'm going to get off, have a tea, and watch that. So I hope everybody has a great night. The Oilers won last night, so that was great to see. Yeah, I'll see everybody else. I'll see everyone in a couple hours. Have a great day.